Ron Gaydos, the word is that you are not necessarily a capitalist.
Well, I am, in the biomimicry sense of capitalism.
Oh, okay, that makes no sense to me. So,
well, here you go. That's one of the coming. It's an ongoing trend for capitalist reform. When you look at how biological systems work in an ecology, you have minor or lesser creatures and plants, animals, taking in materials from the environment, making something with them, putting things back, and keeping a balance.
Don't let me distract you.
Yeah,
fiddle with devices and things like that.
Yeah, you're having to go, and I wanted to go grab it too and play with it.
Everybody wants to play with it.
All right. Yeah.
No, so you know.
So that's what I mean. We see what we're doing. Our group, the New Economy Campaign, it's grown out of that, and what I decided it was time to do with some other friends in the economic development world was start a Pittsburgh Chamber of Cooperatives, along the model of the Chamber of Commerce, that raises awareness and supports worker-owned cooperative business.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of sort of like what you're rolling out, like I want to know who Ron Gaydos is, because you, like many people in town, you roll around town and are an integral part of sort of the scene, the landscape, the entrepreneurial energy in the city, and you have your sort of your consulting role for New Sun Rising and for some small businesses in town, right?
Yeah, my firm is Scenius Strategies.
Yeah.
It's a combination of scene and genius. I'm not the genius.
Yeah.
Everyone else is, and I try to articulate that.
So how I first met you was through, I think it was through your association with the New Economy Working Group. And you know, take for granted that people that listen to this podcast don't even realize that there's this momentum, there's a groundswell around alternative systems to what I would describe as the social Darwinism that is created by strictly pure reductionist capitalism.
Extractive capitalism is how you might say that.
Okay.
Where a value or materials, products are extracted from the system and taken somewhere. Usually that's to ones who have most of the resources. So there is an emerging model called shared value creation. Mm-hmm. So it's not extractive, it's creating shared value among all the participants in the economy. So that would be the workers, owners, employees, the host community, and the environment as well.
So for, say, what year is it, 2015, for 70 years, these things that you're describing would prickle the feathers of the nationalists, especially after World War II, right? Because what you're describing is a lot of what was advocated in sort of socialist and communist government systems.
Oh, that goes back to the 1800s.
Sure. Yeah. But as far as criminalizing the idea, I mean, is that fair? Like, do you think it's fair to say that, you know, after World War II and the Cold War, that American propaganda sort of made these kind of topics taboo?
Well, you know, around that time, there were all kinds of bad things that could happen to a person if they didn't click their heels and give the salute.
Yeah.
At the same time, at that time, taxes were never higher on upper income people, and we never got more done since then.
Yeah.
So go figure and figure it out, folks, because why did that happen?
What you're saying is that during FDR, like the tax rate on
we're talking about Dwight David Eisenhower, the Republican from Kansas.
The tax rate on the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, 91%.
Was higher than it is today.
Oh yeah, it's like 35% is the highest now.
Yeah.
And most people make their money, once they have that much money, they're making it with capital gains, and that's lower than that.
So how did you come to the conclusion that, I'm trying to get like some history of who you are and where you came from.
Yeah.
When did you become such a wacky liberal, Ron Gaydos? Were you always a wacky liberal, or did you grow up in
I grew up in a kind of contrarian household. We were the black sheep in the area. My parents were right off, their parents were right off the boat.
Which boat? From where, I guess?
Wales.
Oh, from Wales.
Wales, yeah. Swansea, Wales is where my mom's family came from.
Did your grandma speak Welsh?
At that time, you didn't do that because you weren't American if you were speaking your native tongue. It was just like,
but
it's a shame we missed it. But I learned one word, Sholahieti,
okay,
which means hello, how are you? And I'm not pronouncing it right.
I'm sure, yeah. Lost in the...
And Dobrozdenia would be Czechers, almost the same in Slovak, where my dad comes from. They came from this tiny little village about 10 miles from the Ukraine in Slovakia.
So these were Welsh and Slovakian immigrants escaping oppression or just looking for economic opportunity?
Looking for, my other side was looking for economic opportunity. They were in the steel business.
Oh, okay.
My great-grandfather started up blast furnaces. He would be what you might call a plant superintendent, or there's probably an engineering analog now, but he wasn't an engineer.
So how do you learn that? Do you know like the stories?
He did it, at that time you got in
apprenticeships.
Yeah, apprenticeships, and if you showed any promise, they kept after you, to make you as useful as possible. So they ended up coming here second class.
Well, that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, right. They got a bed and everything.
Yeah. So these are the Slovakians?
No, these are the Welsh. Yeah, the Slovakians had. Oh, that's a story. The Welsh came. Thomas was their name. Daniel, Thomas, but they actually have lots of other names in Welsh that don't have any vowels, and I can't pronounce them.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and so they came in. Grandpa John Daniel, great-grandpa John Daniel, went around and started up blast furnaces all around the Northeast. And when he was about ready to retire, they happened to be living in Pittsburgh, so this is where he stayed.
Okay, and you were born here in Pittsburgh then?
Yeah. So then they had 11 kids.
Oh, wow.
They had ran out of names because one of the guys was named Thomas.
Really? Very nice. And so this is now your uncles and aunts, right?
Yeah, they're my great uncles and great aunts. And then my mother grew up in Mount Oliver, right down the street here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My dad did too. Margaret Street was where he was, and she was on Quincy Avenue.
And you grew up here in the Hilltop?
I didn't. No, we were middle-class flighters. When I was a baby, they hightailed it, dragged me along out to the South Hills. And I stayed there as long as I had to.
Yeah. So what neighborhood in the South Hills?
Pleasant Hills.
Oh wow. So yeah.
But we were there with the steel industry too, because our house was across the valley, Route 51, from the slag dome. So we used to just watch them slag this U.S. Steel slag
by Century 3
trains.
Mall, or where Century 3 Mall is now, right?
So we used to watch that swamp there, and then climb up the slag dump, and just mountain climbing training there. Yeah.
So where do you think that? How do you think that traces back to your roots of your sort of liberal progressive beliefs?
Well, so I'm talking about my immigrants. My grandfather came because his wife, his mom, died. His father remarried. The stepmother said, "My son will have the land," and he didn't have anywhere to go. So he wandered around there for a while. He learned German, Hungarian, Ukrainian, Polish, Czech, Slovak. He knew, and ended up making his way over to the U.S. And he worked at the mines really hard and the mills really hard. And then somebody found out, or he found, his own way in the insurance industry because he knew all these languages, so he could go in all the ethnic neighborhoods around town and be the sales representative, the agent for the insurance company, what became Metropolitan Life in Pittsburgh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So
they were really, the thing about them was they were really, lots of immigrants are really identified strongly with the elite. So they were Republican.
Yeah.
But as I said, my father was the black sheep of the family, so there was all kinds of I'm not going to be like that. So I got that from him. So, but I started to look at things. We went to church. I was in the South Hills or Pleasant Hills Presbyterian Church youth group. I was one of the leaders. I led services sometimes. We did camps, and I kept on listening to the stuff about if you can't put a rope through the eye of a needle. It's often translated as camel, but I don't think that's right. Or the same word means big rope. If you can't, it's easier for a rich man to get through into heaven, or easier to get a rope through the eye of a needle than it is to get for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. So that started me thinking when I was 10 or 12 years old.
So sort of the theology of proper Christianity, where the poor have a special place in
But just being charitable,
yes,
and compassionate,
yeah,
and at the same time, responsible.
yeah,
And that goes for everybody. But if somebody's having hard times, why blame them?
yeah. Why do you think evangelical and fundamentalists or far right Christianity has gotten so far from sort of that core message of Christianity? Like, how do you think that happened?
I'll put it in 3 words. It's corporate liberation theology. I may be the one who coins the term, but that's what's going on.
So, I mean, it just seems so, it's so much cognitive dissonance. Like, I was in an argument on Facebook earlier this week with some folks that I grew up with that are very devout Christians, but they're also very devout Republicans. And to me, the two philosophies seem at odds, but to them, there's no cognitive dissonance. That they, even though they'll quote sort of scripture on homosexuality or scripture on all sorts of things, women's rights, abortion.
It's pin to tail on the Bible.
Yeah.
In terms of
closing
their eyes and hoping you find the right verse.
Yeah, the scripture about taking care of the poor or the meek shall inherit the earth or what have you. They tend to omit that part, which is odd to me.
Yeah. Well, Christianity, which is the inventor of the corporation.
How do you figure?
The abbots needed to know a predictable path for the assets of the church to succeed to.
So do you mean like Catholicism? Within
Yeah.
Catholicism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they needed to set up a structure for the ownership and transference through the generations. So it wasn't. They weren't church warlords, or they were peace lords, whatever.
Yeah.
They were spiritual leaders and a leader of the community, and that's how the assets of the church were dealt with.
Interesting.
Through early forms of corporations.
Interesting. So as you think about sort of, and you have some solutions that we're going to talk about, but we feel like there's, in Pittsburgh, a groundswell around people interested in building process and infrastructure and capacity around different economic systems. Because obviously you'd be foolish to want to remove capitalism from the United States. It's obviously been a windfall for us culturally. It's created, you could argue, a massive amount of wealth.
There's a dark history to that too.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about how
bad things.
Wall Street
Very bad
started to grow so hard on securities based on the assets of slaves.
Absolutely.
Lehman Brothers comes from Alabama. They ended up getting successful enough to move to Wall Street.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right. But as we look forward to the next 50 years, right? Like you're not going to remove sort of basic business practice, the idea that the identity of a corporation from our cultural paradigm, because it would be chaos, be anarchy, and this is just my opinion. You may want anarchy and chaos, right? Because I don't know.
Well, the chaos and anarchy are two different things. First, is what I'd like to establish.
Yeah. I think that we see value in creating these alternative systems like Bitcoin that really kind of challenge the notions of who gets control of the resource, right? And this is what I think you were talking about when we first started. Or like you create wireless infrastructure that everybody owns, and then you challenge the idea and the notion that ownership has to be consolidated into a tight group.
Well, that's always been a really difficult dialogue.
For sure.
Who owns the commons and who owns their own stuff?
Yeah.
And, the air is commons, water is the commons. Although
Maybe
Nestle would like to have something to say about that. And sometimes people think real estate is to some extent a public utility.
Right. So there's a scale, perhaps. I mean,
right.
There's different people who have different sort of opinions on where community property starts and private property starts.
Yes, and Lynn Ostrom, 2009 Nobel Prize winner, was an economist who focused on the economic performance and benefits of protected commons. Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I got to talk with her once, it was great.
Yeah, and I think based on what I know of what you're doing, you want to help create different organizations and capacity in the region that can perhaps offer alternative economic models to what is consolidated big corporations, right? Where lots of money and resources flow up to a few people, while sort of the folks that are in the bottom of the organizational structure don't get to partake very much in that wealth.
Yeah, that's focusing on what I said first. Is we'd like to move from there are real benefits to more people in a shared value model than just in an extractive model.
Yeah,
and there is a funny relationship between concentrated wealth and economic performance in the economy we have. If you look at the top 5%, I'm getting this data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, federal government. It's really cool. There's a sweet spot between 34% and 38% of the top 5%'s income. The top 5% of earners. When it's below 34%, the economy kind of sputters. When it's above 38%, we have had our recessions and depressions.
So this is what we're talking about, taxable tax rate?
Earned income.
Yeah.
So that suggests that there is a certain amount of earned money, income, that needs to be reinvested.
Absolutely.
But if it's concentrated too much, it can't be reinvested, and then the economy slows down. It kind of like pinches off the fuel.
Yeah.
And if it gets too low, then there's not enough investment to make things happen. That's how I interpret the
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're interested in sort of bringing more co-op models to the city as an alternative, right?
Yeah. A cooperative model would really be a nice way to create shared value and shared burden sharing, shared benefit sharing, profit sharing, asset sharing, whatever the assets of the business are, shared decision making. How many times has anybody, in their teens, early 20s, first jobs, whenever, all the way throughout their lives, walked out the door of their workplace and said, "I'm never going back there again. It's hell on earth."
Yeah.
Even though most of us do. Yeah.
Still go back. So what do you think? Who do you think is appropriate to be sort of in? So we're restructuring. This is actually kind of a timely conversation. We've been an LLC for 2 or 3 years now, and we're going to restructure to a B Corp, I think.
Yeah.
But that sort of the frameworks that we're developing are for incubation of small businesses and big businesses and businesses of scale here in the city is very much, at least at its heart, into this idea of a co-op model, is that you're going to create a business in Pittsburgh. It may succeed or fail, and that economic energy should go somewhere that has a value proposition for you. So rather than build your startup and fail, and that economic energy just evaporates, just disappears, right? Like, what if you would get some shares in a B Corp? What if you would get some ownership of the entity that's providing you the incubation? So
it's kind of like a do-it-yourself VC.
Yeah,
model,
right.
Where
or mutual fund.
These aren't really new. I mean, cooperatively owned business in Pittsburgh goes back to the 1830s and 40s when people were being outpriced by the early industrial.
Yeah.
Artisans couldn't make enough money selling their wares because they were being punched out
by mass production.
So what they did was they pooled their resources to get a better economy at scale, so they could compete for a while. So they did for about 20 years.
Who do you think?
There's the other models are the Koreans, the Korean Americans who come here, and also in Korea, of course, but many of them have just had they have a revolving fund, a community revolving fund that where they invest in.
So where do those all go, and why does it fall on
Well, in what seems to work, the new models really happen when there's stress in the economy, people falling out, being laid off, and becoming unemployable, or the uptake on employment isn't coming as fast. So we've got to look at other things. That's what happened in the 1830s, and then during our Depression, recent in the 30s, Pencraft Cooperative in Fayette County was a 200-acre farm where they opened a sweater mill, ran the farm for displaced miners who had no place to go. They were out in the middle of nowhere with no work, and so that was established through the Roosevelt administration cooperatively with the American Friends Service Committee.
So it's interesting. I think if you said co-op to most people, they're going to think farming and maybe industrial. But you think that co-ops can extend into other aspects of business?
They do. Yeah, in Chicago, there's a cooperatively run and owned and operated window and door factory.
Yeah.
New Era Windows.
So why has it gone away, and why isn't it caught back on? Like,
so where I was getting at, see, the co-ops often have, when they're stressing the economy, from 1915 through the 20s, 30s, there was the Depression. After the war, World War II, the unprecedented growth from like 1945 or so to 1975 was just monstrous. It wasn't necessary to do anything different. You could just go, take a few years of school and go work at big whatever.
Big coal.
Here it was big coal, steel,
and
big construction companies. The housing boom was going on in the 50s because everybody was tired of cities. It was national policy to empty them out.
And do you think there was something advantageous about that other model, like after World War II, right? Like we got
the other model.
Right. I mean, you and I both believe that a healthy society is one that has some sort of imposed equity between the classes, right? Like you can't have.
Well, we know it doesn't work. That's when we have big problems.
Well, yeah, historically, look at any civilization, it fails when there's too much disparity. When the poor and the rich or the middle class are way down at one end, and everybody else has power at the top. But that's
with my little illustration before showed that that's when our depressions have happened.
Exactly. But for some reason, at the turn of the 20th century, these sorts of things, co-ops, these sorts of collaborative work environments that were shared ownership, were relatively common. And they're still common in some European countries. And then something clicked.
Especially the Spanish traditions, South America and Spain.
Yeah, in Spain, right?
It's a huge one there, Mondragon.
Yeah, it's like $750 million, I think it's
about $4 billion.
About $4 billion, okay.
It's almost 750,000 members and employees.
Do you think they just don't scale, and that's why? That the opportunity for extreme wealth is an easier path in sort of our modern corporate infrastructure rather than a cooperative one?
Well, again, it was necessity. Mondragon Cooperative started in the Basque area of Spain, which was the place of strongest resistance to Franco.
Yeah.
So he just cut them loose. It was a desert.
Okay.
So they had to do something. So they started making crafts in church basements, and then they started teaching literature, and then they started it in other banks. And it was like full service economy from there. And so that's often what gets things like this started. That's why the new economy, the cooperative economy, in its nascent form,
it's really the old economy.
It's coming. Yeah. It's just a new. It's the reiteration. Yeah.
Yeah. It's version 2.
Ways that will work for the way we're ordered now and how we relate to each other, taking advantage of it.
So you have this event on the 20th, right?
Yeah. So.
And is it going to be kind of like how to make a co-op?
Right. It's how to. It's if you're trying to start a cooperative, or you just want to know about them.
Yeah.
So we would like to have a few minutes to be able to discuss that. You want to meet other people
who
are interested.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. If you're part of a community group too, that would just suggest anybody with an economic development interest, community development interest, to come on too. And the main thing we want to do is ask everybody, all right, if this is what we're going to do, what do we need? So that's why our idea behind the Chamber of Cooperatives.
Yeah. So I mean, I think
advocate and facilitator.
I think that every co-working space should have some kind of cooperative organization, right? Like, and you're really talking about the hardcore, like, file your taxes as a co-op Like that kind of
as a co-op, or it could be as a B Corp.
Right.
And some actually are plain old S Corps or LLCs, but their bylaws
allow
govern
for
it, dictate, can't say dictate with a cooperative, but their bylaws guide
I mean,
a more egalitarian decision-making process.
Right.
And sometimes a completely egalitarian decision-making process. I mean, there's a machinist,
union.
pretty big machinist company in the Midwest. I think it's in Wisconsin.
I remember this one.
Yeah, and they vote. This is what we're doing, what the direction we're taking, and all the employees vote in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
They move
See,
on.
so that really scares me, right? So we're doing the cooperative model here for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a B Corp. It's not going to file taxes to co-op, or maybe it will. I don't know. We're still in the weeds on that a little bit, but that scares me, right? Because
then you have to listen to other people.
as much as I enjoy my fellow man is also easily led astray and confused, and there's just a lack of efficiency. And this is my comment on progressive movements in general, and my biggest gripe with progressive movements in general is just a lack of efficiency because of this egalitarian thinking, right? Like this idea that we're going to collectively act or we're not going to act, and sometimes
this is more. We are a business, but we want to operate cooperatively.
Yeah.
It's not, we are a bunch of idealists, and we'd like to start a cooperative business. So there's a big difference between the two
talk
approaches.
a little bit about that. I think that's an interesting distinction to pull out.
People, like I said, who are tired of working in a hard situation. I'm with another group. We just had Linda Torrada, the author of Hand to Mouth in town for a speaking engagement. And she was amazing. So that's she got the book deal and everything because she's young mother with 2 kids, and can be identified as white. Mm-hmm. If she was probably a person of color, this book deal might not have come around, and that's tragic because so many people from so many backgrounds are in that situation. 2 jobs, and just fed up, But you have to do it. You have to keep going. You've got a life to live. So there's people like that may want to just move over to another kind of business. One of the things that we're going to need to do, and we anticipate and preparing to do with the Chamber of Cooperatives is to make sure that we can be coaching people through that process to make sure they don't lose efficiency when they're going through their decision making.
Are you saying that successful cooperatives then are successful because it may not be as there's process in place to prevent sort of quagmire of opinion, right?
Yeah, there has to be a default to something that just doesn't stop the presses or whatever.
right? Like you've got to, and it has to be light and efficient, and this is my worry, right? Because our big plans for Incubator B Corp that we've loosely talked about around town is to give it all away eventually, right? Mm-hmm. Like to have such success that as entrepreneurs go through a vesting process and come out the other side, that they're earning ownership in B Corp, reducing the founder's share to some nominal percent, and
hopefully seeding new stuff. That's our intent.
Yeah. But then at some crucial point where the founders no longer have control based on equity or the operating agreement, that's a scary moment in time for that organization because vision gets diluted then. Like the grand, clear path forward of this is the marching order becomes diffused.
It can.
That's my worry.
And I suspect that's why it's so many, a lot of churches, a lot of community groups, a lot of plain old corporations, a lot of Saturday morning baseball leagues and stuff do the same thing. The big prize, people are losing sight of the big prize for various reasons. So that has to be one of the elements of it. What is the prize? So there's quarterly meetings, annual meetings, whatever.
And nimble process on top.
To make sure those are reinforced. So it remains an asset and wealth building, and supporting asset for the members.
Do you think these are kind of the conversations you're going to have on the 20th at 6 p.m. in North Pacific Avenue, Garfield?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, why don't we just say where it is? Okay, thank you for doing that.
Oh, it wasn't a private event, was it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, we really like people who, the curious, the committed, and people ready to go.
Yeah, we're
there's
ready
plenty
to
of
go.
room, so it's Wednesday, May 20th, 6 to 8, 113 North Pacific.
Is that your home?
No, that's the Bluefield Garfield Community Center.
Oh, I've never been there.
Bluefield Garfield Corporation Community Center. So it's a converted church.
Yeah.
Church.
Just a big open
It'll
space.
be a fine place. And we'll have some food and refreshments there if anybody's really fired up to come.
I am very.
Just bring something. So.
I can honestly say that, and I'm very fired up about this actually, because we're going to launch a co-op B Corp this year by mid to late summer, and we're having a lot of conversations around town with what I would consider the traditionalists in our capitalist economy, and we believe that you have to saunter up to the broken system with a solution to replace it. That if you just oppose the broken system violently or loudly, or then you give the broken system a chance to rebuke you or to have a rebuttal against you.
Or regroup.
Or regroup. But if you saunter up and slip in the back door and just offer something that is obviously a greater value proposition, this is a core tenet of capitalism, right? That if you offer value, you should get the customer.
Well, that's what we're committed to, the idea that this is a real value to certain people.
Yeah.
Not just educated liberals.
Right.
We're talking some of the most promising, actually not promising, successful and promising in the future co-ops is a cooperative called Prospera in the LA area, which is all domestic service people.
Interesting.
Cleaners, laundry, landscapers.
So a service-based co-op.
Yeah.
Basically, like you need your house cleaned, you call up this co-op and they send out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And there's another cooperative business that does home medical, home skilled and unskilled nursing. It's in Philadelphia. So there's models to work from. It's we would like to invite everybody who has ideas about that.
Yeah.
Skeptics, welcome.
Yeah.
And because we need to have some of the hard questions answered, because every place is different. We're not going to do it like LA. We're not going to do it like.
So what would a skeptic say, right? Like, so to me it sounds like it's super
touchy-feely.
But it's not. Like, it's this. Do you want to work in a company that you own, or do you want to work for some dude who lives in Fox Chapel? I mean, to me, it's a simple. 90% of the time, people would say, "I'd rather own the company," right?
Yeah.
So if we can create frameworks and models for what that looks like. I don't know any rational person would resist that if the pay is the same, right? Like if the structures are effective and efficient enough to result in, it's a $50,000 a year job if you're in a co-op, it's a $50,000 a year job if you're in,
those things being equal, people would probably work for less if they have their skill and effort recognized, appreciated,
and say, and influence,
and
right?
stable.
Yeah.
Right, and they have a say in it.
So what's the argument?
There's no sending 10, 15, 20% or more up to corporate.
Yeah.
They're corporate.
Right.
They're the corporate head.
Yeah, it's saving an overhead, really, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously skeptics are going to say, like, you're all hippies kind of thing, right? But I'm not a hippie. Just want to be clear about that. I'm very interested in this.
Yeah.
Don't have the hair for it anymore. I might have been one day. Is there an intellectual argument against these kinds of systems that's common?
The main one is that it's not efficient. We need authority.
Which is what I kind of brought
up. If you do think about it, it's really a paradox when most people spend 50% or more of their waking hours in an authoritarian situation at work.
Yeah.
So, and people are wondering why we have a problem with people not really espousing democratic ideals anymore, not voting.
Yeah.
Being really even
that's interesting.
contemptuous toward the government, which is us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that, it will have, I think, a really good. It does when it happens. It has a great impact on civic life too.
And a co-op doesn't mean you don't have a boss, right? Like if you're in a co-op, you still have a manager. You still have people
Usually
that are making...
larger operations will do that. You know,
We don't all
the Fourth River Workers Guild,
Yeah.
who do construction and landscaping. There are 5 guys. They figure it out every day.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
But 10, 15, 20 people, you need to have some delegation of authority just for efficiency.
Yeah. Well, and the skill set
and that's
too,
not
right?
a problem too, because it's more than an enlightened dictator, which is the best we can do now with the kind of extractive corporate model. If you've got a good boss and a good culture and they read all the great magazines and Inc. and Fast Company, then maybe they're creating a working culture that's fulfilling to people as well as efficient. But that's really a rare exception.
And it's skill-based too. And if you're going to move co-ops into high growth, high wealth fields, like why couldn't you have a co-op that builds software?
Yeah.
Right? But
there are some. I can't think of the names right now, but then there's web design co-ops. And
but
things like that.
in that, there has to be a project manager who has or a stack guy, right? Like a back-end guy who just knows very well the technical aspects. So not every worker in that co-op is equal because not everybody worker is the same skill.
Well, and it's an example of that is the Ujamaa Collective in the Hill District. They're at 1901 Center Avenue.
Okay.
And they sell Africana art and clothing, and a lot of it's been made by the members. They have an executive director, Lakeisha Wolf, and several people who are members who work on sales and that aren't managers.
Yeah,
and that works. Yeah.
In the co-op, salary doesn't have to be the same either, right? Like it's more egalitarian, but it doesn't remove competition. It doesn't remove reward for education or reward for effort, right?
There are probably some that do that, but they have to be so idealistically committed that they're as rare as the benevolent dictator type of...
Right, that's the far end, right? Yeah.
Most of them...
It's a cult.
Well, that's the extractive corporations are moral cults too.
On both ends, right?
But there's a delegation of skills. There's people who handle more of the activity, and so need to be compensated.
Do you have a sense how
time and skill, more preparation for that? And all those goes into the decisions. It just needs to be recognized as equitable by the members.
Right. So you won't have somebody pulling a $500,000 salary because they sit in the big office above the workers' floor.
That's not likely.
Because
for a co-op, unless the productivity is just so monstrous at that level. 500K would be monstrous because that would be like probably a $50 million company.
Right. You would assume that the gap between that top guy, the guy who, because of his training, education, is making decisions to keep the co-op efficient, the wage gap's going to be much smaller, I would hope.
Right.
Because everybody's voting on the salary.
We're not going to have the 600 to 1.
Right, because the shareholders are voting on the salary instead of just anointing some dude the $1 million salary or the golden parachute.
Yeah. The golden parachute. It's not going to be glorified. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a sense? Well, it's networking too at that point. It's almost nepotism. Those salaries they feed on themselves. But do you have a sense of like how the Spanish co-op, what's it called again?
Prospero.
Oh, the $4 billion one.
Oh, the $4 billion Mondragon.
Mondragon. Do you have a sense of how that's organized? Do they have like they have some kind of hierarchical system?
They do. They have a CEO. And members are shareholders. But it's one person, one vote. So if you own a million shares, you're not a million times voter.
Yeah. And it's a collection of many different companies, correct?
Well, they have industrial equipment company. They make white goods, appliances, and all that. They have schools. They have a bank, a venture fund. There's more than I'm not mentioning, but it's pretty much whatever touches people's lives.
We have nothing like that here in America. That's weird.
No. It was my dream when I was at a position in Braddock to see what we could do to put together a small version of that, the Mondragon Cooperative.
Well, I mean, our hope is that...
history conspired for me to be here.
Well, our hope is that we get a little money, and we're going to be able to create this entrepreneurial-owned incubator.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an entity that's going to incubate people in town and their businesses and give them support, much like New Center Rising and that kind of mission-driven work, and then also give them ownership of that incubation, of that actual entity that is claiming to be the authority as they best reach certain metrics.
Yeah. I mean, that would be kind of like the cooperative, democratic Blue Tree Capital. To name, just one.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? Yeah, interesting. But to get into Blue Tree, you need to have a giant checking account to get.
And they're
into Blue
outside. They're buying influence rather than joining a team, right?
Yeah. A startup could join our incubator, and in 5 years, get to scale through sort of resources and capacity that's going to be provided by the incubator, and then that startup's commitment is not only to put cash and to put resources back into the incubator for the next round coming up, but they're also going to be rewarded with ownership of the incubator. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing for free. It's a fair exchange of ideas and resources and money. We hope.
Yeah.
We hope
that's right on.
Wouldn't it be cool if Pittsburgh was known for the resurgence of this kind of cooperative corporate infrastructure in America?
That'd be totally awesome.
Wouldn't that be, instead of trying to be known for
we have a tradition of it. I'm saying, going back to 1830, doing it again in the 1860s, 1880s.
I mean, it's really, I think, would be awesome. Instead of trying to be known for another San Francisco, Austin, Chicago, another market that's conducive to institutional investment or venture capital or angel investment, what if we created a distinctly Pittsburgh-flavored version of that?
Well, it would have to be, because of the Pittsburgh left. And I'm not talking about the left-leaning liberals, I'm talking about people looking at each other at a red light. Yeah. No, okay, go ahead. It's not charge, it's, hey, go ahead. And then I can move 2 seconds later. I call that the natural neighborhood network optimization. So
if people go to your Twitter, Scenius Strategies Twitter, they can find
Strat, yeah.
Scenius Strat at Scenius Strat, and there's Facebook? Is there a Facebook event for this?
There's Facebook. That is just Google or Facebook. Look for New Economy. That comes up. New Economy. That's through the Thomas Merton Center, who's a co-sponsor of the event.
So Wednesday, May 20th, 6 p.m., 113 North Pacific, Garfield. Sit down.
113 is going to be right around the 5100 block of Penn.
Yeah.
Block down.
Okay, cool. And everybody should come out, learn about co-ops, and see who else in the city is working on co-ops. Ron Gaydos, thank you for hanging out at the hardware store.
Absolutely, yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good.
I hope to see everybody there.